Hey, what's up, everyone? This is David Greenspan, and you are either watching us live, watching this recording, or listening to the Mindshare podcast, a proud member of the Industry Syndicate Media Network. Additional podcasts are available at industrysyndicate.com and mindshare101.com. This week's episode is sponsored by Kit's Keep in Touch Systems. This is episode 11. Like me, she went to school for marketing. In 2005, she then stepped into the wonderful world of real estate, which led her to a position within Min News, helping them exponentially grow their social media footprint from 7,000 to over 250,000 followers and launching their ambassador program, which has now reached over 2 million friends and followers. In 2012, she decided to take it all a step further, and she started up her own business. She's a public speaker, an Amazon best-selling author of the book called Get Social Smart, and she is the CEO of Katie Lance Coaching and Consulting. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Katie Lance to the Mindshare podcast today. Katie, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, David. It's so exciting to be here today.
Well, we're excited to have you, and I'm really excited to get into some good stuff. Now, guys, as many of you know, and who know me, I can get talking and could easily stretch this conversation to well over an hour. That being said, I am going to do my very best to keep us on track today. I know my friends watching right now are probably laughing about that. But guys, the other day I was booked for 2 separate events on back-to-back days, and I thought it would be good content to record myself and the audience while I walked up on stage. Once I got up there, I then bravely told everyone to hold a quick sec while I polished my post with some cool emojis and some words, and then shared it up to my story. As I told everyone what I was doing, they all naturally had a quick chuckle, but then I naturally rolled into suggesting that they pull out their phones and open up their social, and I walked every single person in that audience through how to story that moment as well. The thing is that I found, and I find this a lot, as Katie, I'm sure you do as well, is that many had no clue where to start. And that's what leads those same people who want to up their game to go the route of spending money to make it work rather than putting in the time and the effort. So my very big question to start us off today, Katie, what is your take on Facebook ads? Are they the be all and end all solution for a realtor to achieve success in this game?
Facebook ads. Well, that's a big question right out of the gate, right? Well, to be honest with you, I don't think Facebook ads are the end all and be all. I think that there's some great opportunity with Facebook ads. I think you can get some amazing targeting that you can't really get anywhere else, which is amazing. I think it's still great bang for your buck in terms of, you spend a little bit of money to get a post out there to generate some leads. But, as I shared with you kind of before we went live here today, I don't think it's the end all and be all. And I think a lot of people just try to throw their money into it, hoping for some success. And I think that there's a lot of things that you can do organically that don't cost a whole lot of money that will help to attract the right clients that you want to work with versus just chasing leads. So I do think they're valuable, but I don't think it's the silver bullet. Okay.
See, I like that answer. So we're because the thing that I get from a lot of people is, especially when you ask those audiences, and I know you've probably done the same, but it's, who wants to up your social media game? And it's like everybody puts up their hand. And I say to people, like, if you could spend just a very small amount of money with me right now to up that game, would you do it? And everybody puts up their hand, and you're like, no, that is not how to get it started, right? So right. It's funny because there's again, this is what we've seen in our industry for the past number of years now is like, be on social media, be all over social media. And everybody thinks, well, hey, I don't have time for it. If I can just get somebody else to do it for me, well, I'm just going to, it's going to work out for me. Right. So, I mean, on the front then, because where I wanted to ask you, and I was going to ask you if you were going to say, yes, get into it. And I don't think you just said don't.
Right. I'm not saying don't. I just don't think it's the silver bullet. I think you have to do it in a really strategic way. I think you have to be really intentional with your content. And I think you have to build an overall social media plan and then see how Facebook ads can be a part of that versus just, I think I'm going to boost this post today.
Okay. Right. So in terms of that, then, I mean, have you even got any suggestion on type of ads, or is it more like if you're really doing your organic stuff properly, you almost don't need to go there?
I think there's some value in spending a little bit of money with Facebook ads, whether it's an ad through Facebook's ad manager or through a boosted post. Typically, though, you really have to think about, why do most people come to Facebook, right? Just the average person comes to Facebook. Typically, it's kind of between moments of their day. They're standing in line at Starbucks, or they're sitting in their car waiting to pick up their kids, and they've got their phone and they're just kind of like mindlessly scrolling. And your posts and your ads are sandwiched between their best friend and their mom and, everything else that they're seeing. And, very rarely people are going to Facebook to find a realtor or buy a house. And so what we see are the ads that are most effective are ads that are bringing value. So if you are, one of the things we teach the value of putting out valuable content, video content like you're doing here, David, or podcast content. If you're putting out content on a consistent basis that's really valuable, that's bringing, that's really informative or maybe even a little entertaining to your potential clients and prospects, then sure, put a little bit of money behind it. Maybe boost that by, $10 or $20 just to kind of get a little bit of a bigger reach when it comes to your post. And I think there's some other things that you could do strategically. I've seen some agents do some great things like with lead ads. A big part of it, I think, has to do with your content. What content are you putting out there? Are you putting out valuable content, or are you just saying, hey, call me today, I'm number one, right? that doesn't quite work in social media.
That doesn't work.
Right? So content is a big thing. And then your targeting. I think that's one of the biggest things that people kind of miss when it comes to Facebook ads, is that they're targeting everybody in their market area over the age of 25. Right? And then they're wondering why their ads don't work. So really kind of honing in on who you want to target, taking advantage of some of the things like custom audiences can be really effective.
Yeah.
So those are just a couple things that I think make a big difference.
And just very quick on that then, I mean, and not to get too deep there, but the Facebook ads manager versus the new business manager, would you say that if people do want to get into this whole thing of ads and whatnot, go to business manager?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook ads has changed quite a bit. And so I think business manager right now is it is a good opportunity. There's, it's just like anything else. When you do something new, it's going to be a little frustrating, and the buttons have moved and you're not quite sure where to click. And it takes a little bit of kind of trial and error of figuring out what is the best, fit for you. But yeah, business manager can be a great solution. It's a great way to run those custom audiences, especially for those of you who have a database. If you have an email database, you can download that database, re-upload that back into Facebook, and then run ads to people who already know, like, and trust you. And we find that those are some of the best ads that you can run on Facebook.
I love that part of it. Like, to me, that is the mind share right there, because if you're doing the stuff you're supposed to be doing regular, organically to that right group, and you're really getting your message out there, not just on social media, but you're using email, maybe the phone, direct, whatever.
Yeah.
This is a perfect opportunity here to use Facebook ads strategically to go after the same people. And now you're relevant, because like you just said, when it comes to like why we go to social, I mean, I don't know about you. Did you used to have a BlackBerry?
That's actually the phone I didn't have, surprisingly.
Oh my God.
I had a flip phone. That was my phone I had for a long time, but I kind of skipped the BlackBerry.
They had a game on there called Brick Breaker.
Oh, I remember that game though.
Okay. Like I say, Facebook's like the new Brick Breaker. We never knew why we were actually going to Brick Breaker back then. And now it's like, oh my God. Oh, sorry. One second. I'm just on Facebook. I don't even know how I got there. Definitely not going to buy stuff. But if people were going to spend money, right? If people were going to spend money on it, is there a certain dollar figure or like a rule of thumb? We've heard people say like every 100,000 is about $10. Like, what would you throw out there just to kind of put that topic to bed?
I think you have to look at your overall marketing budget too. If you ask Facebook will say, well, you have to spend at least $500 a month to get any kind of traction on Facebook. And for some people, $500 is a drop in the bucket. For other people, it's like, oh my God, are you kidding me? That's a lot of money. So I don't know. It's hard to put out a number because I think there's so many factors that go into place. I think you really have to first start with putting together a consistent strategy. Doesn't mean you're on Facebook every single day, but getting into a consistent rhythm with your content, and also to take a step back, figuring out what your voice is, what your why is, when it comes to that content. And then I think experimenting. It's easy to experiment with $5 or $10. Try that. Run an ad for a day or two, see what kind of traction that you got, and then you can always up it, right? Well, I think one tip when it comes to budget is if you're running a couple different ads, let's say you're running maybe 3 different ads and you're spending $25 an ad, keep an eye on those ads. And if there's one that's really performing better than the other one, you're getting more clicks, turn off the other ones, and put your money towards that one. So, you have to, you can't just set it and forget it. You've got to really, look to see how many clicks you're getting, what are your impressions like, and you'll see, like, Facebook will show you your numbers pretty easily. And, it's funny because I feel like I'm always wrong. I'm always like, oh, that's the ad that's going to do really well. Like, 3 clicks, so just pay attention to your numbers and, and then, like I said, turn the ones off that aren't working and put more money towards the ones that are.
And you know what? I think, I mean, and again, I'm going to put this Facebook ad topic to you because I get so many cooler questions to ask you about that I think are going to be a lot more valuable to a lot of the people that especially really want to up their game. Yeah. The whole thing to ads and online lead gen that everybody here needs to know is that, again, when you do it, it's one thing to create the ad and it's one thing to put up a picture or a video or a carousel, whatever it is, put in a little bit of content. But where we just talked about, what are they clicking on? And then where's that data going? And then what are you doing to take that data? And now, you've sort of got your lead. What are you now doing to try to nurture and then potentially convert that? And that takes a lot more in the background with you. I mean, from CRM to marketing to whatever, lead magnets. And again, if you've got, $500 a month to spend on marketing, and you take all $500 and put it towards social media or online, you haven't got any dollars left over to do the stuff in the background that you need to be doing to make this come to life.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal there. And I think that it's a much deeper thing there than just spending a few bucks to make it work. Yeah. And if people are looking to try to save themselves time by hiring somebody, my theory on that is you've just spent, you just caused yourself to have to work harder, which means you have less free time because you have to pay more bills. So anyways, so now, taking into account that we do have people of all ages, all skill levels, we've got the generation that's like below, like younger than us. I mean, younger than me, that has like walked into this world and this is normal to them. Whereas we've got like a generation. We've got the generation of people that are still in this biz that are like what I call the old schoolers, the ones we can really learn a lot from about building relationships. But then we've got this middle ground, and so looking at that, what advice or tips can you share to everyone to help them even just get started or even more comfortable with their social media?
Well, I think a big part of social media is kind of taking a step back. And a lot of people will say, where should I start? Should I be on Facebook? Should I be on LinkedIn? Should I be on Instagram? And how many times a day should I post? And I just think taking a little bit of a step back, especially when it comes to social media for business, I think is really important. So what I mean by that is thinking about your why, of why you're doing this, of what you want to accomplish. Is it to build your brand? Is it to generate more leads? Is it, to promote a listing? Is it all of the above? Right? So kind of thinking through that process of what you want to accomplish. But I think even further, thinking about what your voice is, because right now with social media, it's different than it was a few years ago. And there's so much noise. I mean, I always say, I feel like when I go to Facebook, I'm like standing on the side of the freeway, just like watching cars whiz by. So you have to think about your content, a little bit differently than maybe you did a few years ago, or maybe even a few months ago. And so thinking about, why do you love what you do? Why did you get into real estate? Who do you like to work with? Who do you not like to work with? And kind of thinking a little bit about who you want to attract. I think that's really the first part of this whole conversation. And once you've done a little bit of, I guess, soul searching, so to speak, then you can start to think about the next step, which is content. And, content that helps tell the story of what it feels like to work with you. That's what content really does. When you put out original content, it can be really powerful, whether it's video content, blog content, podcast content. It takes a little bit of time, money, and resources to do that. But the traction that you're going to get from original content is so much greater than just like automating some post that you read somewhere or sharing some link from somewhere else. It's changed in a lot ways. So it's not the easy button, right?
No, it totally isn't, right? And I think a lot of people go that easy route. Like I know, and I mean, we all experience this, but you get a friend request, and I mean, at least my MO here would be I will click on, especially if I don't know who you are. And it might tell me there's mutual connections, but let's first of all see if you're even like legit or if it was some, whatever. So depending on the amount of mutual friends you've got depends on where you go with it. But
and who those mutual friends are.
Yeah, who are they? Sometimes I'll be like to my wife, Jennifer, I'll be like, hey, Jen, it says that Katie's your friend. I don't know who Katie is. And she's like, I don't know who Katie is. I'm like, yeah, I will
It's
go
so
on there
true.
and I will scroll a little bit just to see, what are you up to? What kind of stuff do you post? Are you somebody that maybe I do want to connect with?
Yeah.
Again, there's some of those people that you see, all they do is they share.
Yeah.
And they don't just they just share. Like there's not even a, here's my input or here's what
Right.
I learned and like here's what you can learn. It's just share.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I do not gravitate to that content. I don't know that a lot of people would. Right.
No, I think a lot of people don't gravitate toward it because there's part of social is social, right? I mean, that's the whole point of it is your personality and your opinion. And, I think sometimes I see this happen a lot in real estate, where agents and brokers, they want to come across really professional. They don't want to offend anybody. But the opposite side of that is then they become really vanilla, really
Right.
boring. And
Boring.
so I'm not saying go out there and start offending people. Like don't start polarizing people. But at the end of the day, like it's okay to have an opinion. And
Social media tip 101, go piss people off today.
exactly. Hashtag, right?
Okay, so here, then we know that this is a relationship business, right? I mean, like
Yes.
the real estate world, it's pure relationships. I tell everybody like there's no other business in this world that is more based on relationships than
Yep.
real estate because it's the biggest asset of somebody's life, right?
Yep.
And I'm telling them this every day. So it's, how does social media help an agent build more or build a deeper relationship? And what do you suggest that they might do specifically with social, even when they meet a new person? So they've just met a new lead, maybe they're door knocking, prospecting, they're out at a gathering, somebody they've never met before. How can they connect with people on social?
Yeah, like you said, real estate definitely is a relationship business. It's usually for most people the biggest moment in their life. It's right up there with getting married or having kids.
Right. Yeah.
And so that is a big piece that I think sometimes that gets neglected in this social media conversation. We hear a lot about lead generation and getting new business and running Facebook ads, as we talked about. But the other side of that is being really intentional, keeping in touch with your past clients. And social media is one of the best ways to do that. You can do things like create lists. You can do that on Facebook. You can even do that on Twitter. You can set up notifications on Instagram. You can find out when it's people's birthdays and connect. And I always like to say, take the online offline. If you see it's your past client's birthday, you could be one of the 50 people that writes on their page, happy birthday, or you could be one of the few people that calls them on their birthday and reaches out or writes a note. Exactly. So to your point or your question of when you first meet someone, I think there's that balance. You don't want to be creepy, right? You don't want to be that person.
The stalker.
The stalker, right? So I think there's some simple things you can do. I think, email is always a great place to start, especially with a prospect or lead, following up through email. I know a lot of people use BombBomb to create set a quick video through email, which I think is professional but personal. And then I always like to Google the person too, which I think just from a safety perspective is really important. But just do a quick, Google search, put their name and the city. And I mean, depending on who their name is, if it's a really common name, it might be kind of challenging to find out who they are, but do a quick Google search. And usually the first place socially that I like to connect is either LinkedIn or Instagram, depending if they're on Instagram or not. So I usually just do a kind of a quick search on either LinkedIn or Instagram. Kind of depends on how the conversation went as well. And I will, especially on LinkedIn, just send them a personal note. If I can see they're on LinkedIn, I'll just say something like, hey, David, it's great chatting with you today at the open house. I'd love to connect here and stay in touch here on LinkedIn. And, you add that kind of personal note. And I think that especially LinkedIn is that professional network. So it's really well accepted. So that's kind of what I'd recommend. Google search, be careful, reach out. And then, as things progress over the course of time, then I think you can connect on other platforms.
And would you say Facebook being other platforms, or is Facebook kind of in that LinkedIn, Instagram group so far?
I think for a lot of people who aren't using Facebook for business, Facebook is still a really personal place for them.
Right. Okay.
So I think once you've established kind of that face-to-face, and maybe you've met with them a few times, maybe now they're a client and you're in the middle of a transaction, I think that's more of an appropriate time personally to kind of reach out and say, hey, I've really loved working with you and your spouse. I'd love to connect here on Facebook. I think every agent's going to have a little bit of a different feeling for that. I have a lot of clients we work with that like to do it at the end of a transaction. It's kind of like that cherry on top, like, hey, I love working with your wife. I'd love to stay in touch here on Facebook.
Okay.
So I think it's kind of a personal decision in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and you know what? I would agree with that completely because again, from a perspective of what is social media all about, it is about social rather than business. And I mean, I think I think that is my same recommendation is, don't hit people over the head with a bat when it comes to your business and like, hey, oh, you want to connect on Facebook? Good. I sell houses. I sell houses. I
Yes.
sell. Nobody really cares. And unfortunately, that's reality to it, right?
Yes.
So my thing is all about mind share, right? And it's about building that mind share and really getting your message out there to your audience, having them actually remember who you are, what you do for a living. And this is that overall umbrella of around marketing and branding. And for one, I will tell everyone about consistency. I think it's huge. And I personally, I love stories, not just like somebody's story. And I want to ask you about that in a moment, but stories like Facebook stories, Instagram stories. I love them because they sit right at the top of the feed. And they're a lot of fun to do. Like once you get used to them, they're so much fun. What do you suggest are some of the top ways that people can really use social media, an agent can use social media to build that mind share?
Well, I think you're right on with stories. I think, when stories kind of came out over the last year or two, and it's really kind of taken, I think, social media by storm in a lot of ways. We still have the traditional news feed on Facebook with photos and videos and links that people share. And we still have the news feed on Instagram with photos and videos, and same thing on LinkedIn. But I think stories has changed it in a lot of ways. And for people who don't know, what happens with the stories, you can take photos or quick videos and they get stitched together and then they disappear after 24 hours. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, are you kidding me? What? We spend so much time creating content that's just going to disappear. But where I think there's so much value is in kind of showing your behind the scenes, right? I always say this, your story, whether it's Instagram stories or Facebook stories or both, it's like the story behind the story, right?
Yeah.
So for an agent or broker, I'll just give you a quick example. If I was an agent or broker and I had a beautiful new listing, well, those beautiful professional photos, those are going to go up on my Facebook business page, right? I probably would have a nice video. That's going to go up on my Facebook business page. I might run some ads to that. But my story is like the behind the scenes, like meeting with the client, like, hey, I'm waiting for the stager. And this is why our stagers are really important. And hey, there's the photographer over there. Like it's the behind the camera, right? Like that story behind the story. And I think we live in a day and age of, I hate to say kind of reality TV, but people connect with that. People will work with you because of your experience and your expertise, but they truly connect with you and do business with you over the course of time because you're relatable. And that's where I think there's a lot of value in stories is that relatability.
Yeah. And I would say, I love the way you position that too. It's just sort of kind of like another way for our audience to hear it. Cause I say a very similar thing where, if I'm going to do this live, well, everybody right now, you could see Katie and myself. Well, if you go to my story, you're going to see the microphone and the other, the million laptops on my desk where I've got a live feed and I've got the recording feed and I've got my other stuff. And, it's that little bit of different insight into it. And it, again, lets people know you're real. I say to agents too, like you're doing an open house on Saturday morning, right? Take a photo of you getting your coffee. Take a photo of you getting the shoes on. Take a photo of your trunk filled with open house signs. Maybe you running out there to put the sandwich boards out at the road, take a photo setting up the house, like little things to sort of get people sort of with that build up. Right. But I like the way you position that of sort of you take the nice fancy stuff, we put it up on like the stuff that will stay forever. And then use our stories to kind of have some fun in the background to let people into who we really are. Right.
Absolutely. And to your point, I always say, look at your life as content. As you're out and about, you see a beautiful sunset or, you see things that sort of stand out to you. I also think stories are a great opportunity to share a little bit of that personal side of you, which doesn't have to mean every moment of your life. But like you said, you're at the coffee shop, you're drinking a great glass of wine or whatever it might be. Those little things. I see you, with your kids and hockey, like that, like connects you with people, right? You feel like you know them. And it's that, like back to your point of relationships, like it is a relationship business. So if you are using social media to not just generate leads, but to build better relationships that will hopefully turn into more business, that's a big business reason to create those stories, to, put that content out there.
Well, there's the thing, like, we've never talked children or sports, but I know you guys are a baseball family, right?
Yes,
and like, from my stories, we're part and parcel like a hockey and a baseball family. So it's like, there's a connection point that is, and again, guys, everybody, Katie and I have met before, we've spoken before, but it's that idea of when there's even people you've never spoken with before, you want to figure out how to break the ice.
Yeah.
Here's an exact reason. I mean, and to your thing of like not telling everybody everything necessarily, but kind of letting people in. I mean, Chelsea, our friend Chelsea Pites said it. I loved when she said it, but you know, it was kind of this line of, she goes, you know, let people know you're on date night. Just don't tell them what you're talking about on date night, right? So it's like nobody needs to know the conversation, but the fact that you're kind of out, you're enjoying time, there's, you know, the nice restaurant, whatever, you can share that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so
Absolutely.
it's letting people in, but not letting them all the way in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. A lot of it's just common sense too, you know, and just, you know, I think getting your own level of comfort and your own level of where things go. I think that's also a big thing. A lot of people get hung up on, where should I share this? So, you know, thinking about where certain pieces of content go. I know I kind of share more personal things on Facebook because that's typically where most of my family is. And that's what we use Facebook for, is kind of that personal sharing. And then, you know, thinking about business and where does that go, and that type of content, and you know, just getting that kind of all right in your head. So it just becomes kind of second nature.
Yeah. Right. So now content, consistency. Again, I pose this question a lot within my challenges. And I actually poll my challengers to get this data, and I'll put it out there in other places as well. And then I try to feed this data back as value add. And so one of the things we said was, we had asked people, and sort of the short form, the Coles notes on this one, but you know, what do you love doing to get business? What do you hate doing to get business, and where do you see most of your business from? And the beauty was, like, everybody loves, you know, networking and referrals and hanging out with people. Everybody hates door knocking and cold calling, go figure.
Right.
But it's the interesting one too. I mean, and don't get me wrong, the people that said, like, where do they get most of their business from? Not only was it networking, friends and family, but it was door knocking and cold calling. So just FYI to everybody out there. This is the thing that I found interesting though. When asked what they hated, part of one of the answers was giving away free value. And I thought that was interesting because a lot of folks out there want to, again, step up their social media game, but those same folks don't want to give out free value. And we talk a lot about giving out value, right? And being consistent about what you do. And that's really how you social media, right? It's about doing that stuff. So, you know, in terms of coming up with content, sharing it out there to create engagement, building that mind share, you know, it all helps put somebody in the right place at the right time. But can you provide some insights, some tips? I mean, even talk about, again, so we just talked about stories. How could somebody take their story, and we sort of just dug into this, but a little bit further maybe, of simplifying the idea around content creation, I guess, for realtors?
Yeah. Well, I think a big part of this is thinking about all the questions you get asked all the time. You know, I always say if I get asked a question more than once or twice, that's a great piece of content. That could be a video, that could be a blog post, that could be a Facebook Live. And so that's always a great place to start. In fact, looking in your email, looking in your sent email of emails that you know, continually send to people with questions that people ask you. And as far as stories, you know, stories I think are one of the ways that people really remember things, right? You know, you hear a great speech, or you hear a great presentation, and what you probably will remember a week later, or maybe even a few months later, are maybe some of the stories that speaker told, because stories do an amazing job of kind of cementing, you know, details, and they serve a purpose. So I think you can kind of brainstorm and think about questions you get asked all the time, like who pays for what, and how's the market, and how, you know, should I hire a stager? All those things are important. But I think there's also an important aspect to just kind of brainstorming maybe your own stories of, you know, when did you first buy a house, or why did you get into real estate? Like, there's a lot of stories behind that. And it doesn't mean, again, that you have to, like, you know, share your whole life story, but just maybe kind of brainstorming a few of those that you think might be really helpful. Maybe there was a situation with a client where they weren't sure if they should stay renting, you know, be a renter, or if they should, you know, make that plunge and become a buyer. You don't have to necessarily divulge who and every single detail, but you can use that as an example to tell a story. So I think those are a few things that do make a big difference. And one thing I'll just mention, you mentioned something that I think is really real, and that is a lot of people are afraid to share freely. They're afraid to share too much. They don't want to give away too much. But I just would encourage people, there's an amazing thing that happens when you come from a place of abundance versus scarcity. And when you are able to, you know, put out valuable information, but at the end of the day, if people really want to know, like, how does that work? How do I do X, Y, and Z? They're going to call you. They're going to contact you. You know, it's just like people are searching for homes online, but then when they're really ready to buy, like, very few people are buying online. Like people are still by and large going, okay, I need to find a realtor. Like when it comes down to, to business. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Oh, I love it. And just so everybody knows, I didn't pay her to say any of this. But this is, again, hey, this is what the Mindshare delivery is all about. I mean, when you talk about, somebody's story, a lot of times, I mean, I found too, and I've done, I think this morning, I released video number 143 for my 1 minute rants. And typically those rants,
I loved it. I watched it.
Oh, you're the best. I thank you. But there's the thing though. And the one thing that I have found over my time is with those particular videos, not the lives, not the webinars, but those videos there, if I tell you a story about something, an interaction I had with somebody, they just seem to get a lot better engagement. Now, I preface all that and I say to everybody, I don't sit there and watch my views and I don't watch my likes and my reactions, my comments, because if I did, I probably would have stopped video a long time ago, right? Because you're going to get haters, you're going to get videos that don't, there's not a lot of viewership, whatever, but there's that idea of, when I do tell a story about something that took place, look, I'm sharing it with you for content, and I'm sharing it with you to get you thinking so that you can now go, have I been in a situation like that? Or do I think that way? Maybe I do need to open my eyes, or maybe I do need to rethink, or maybe I'm on the perfect right track for what I'm doing. Yeah. But I guess just on that point, I think that that story that you either share about yourself and your experiences, or even with others, that is very powerful for people to take in and just, dissect themselves and be able to do something to, action it out that day. Right.
Absolutely. And like I said, especially for people who've been in real estate a long time, you've worked with hundreds of clients over the years. And so if you think about kind of the common concerns that come up over and over again, you probably have some great stories that you could share. And I think that storytelling just, again, it really resonates with people. It can be a great piece of content. It helps to achieve your goal of getting more traction on social media, of attracting the people you want to work with. It's a win-win in a lot of ways.
It absolutely is, guys. And again, an amazing way for anybody to be coming up with content. Now, speaking of content, we talk a lot about being consistent on social, how crucial it is. And again, you've said it, you don't need to be there every single day. I do try to encourage my challengers more from a habit perspective of being there at least once a day, or at least engaging in conversation with people. I know our buddy Gary V talks like, if you're not doing it at least 4 times a day, you're going to be lost. And I think that is totally overwhelming for most of the people that we're talking to on a regular basis. But from a perspective of consistency, from a perspective of time, and the fact that most people are just trying to save themselves time by spending a bunch of money, which again, I think is ass backwards. But I take the third Friday night of every month, and I literally lay out a big wall, like the big desktop calendar on my dining room table. And I literally just start writing. And I'm trying to lay out what kind of content can I come out with this week, or pardon me, this upcoming month. So like the following month. And I lay out literally 30 days worth of content. And it might take me not just a few hours on the Friday night, but I keep attacking that thing all weekend until literally it's been filled out. And I will say, it is a huge amount of time that I'm dedicating. It takes a lot of brain power to think 30 days ahead and go, what am I going to post that's going to be relevant? And it doesn't mean that I don't change on the fly when I need to, as often as I see fit. But, it certainly helps me stay consistent. I think that the consistency is a big reason why Mindshare continues to just that next step, right? Mm-hmm. So I know what I do. And of course I follow you, so I kind of sort of know what you do. But can you share some ideas around how people can stay organized, and that whole idea around like the calendar, content calendar, batch creation, that type of topic?
Yeah, absolutely. We could do probably a whole podcast just on batch, right? Batch creating your content. And for people who haven't heard that term before, I'm just a big believer, and I know, David, you just talked about this idea of, if you're going to sit down and create one piece of content, you might as well sit down and create multiple pieces of content, or as you're talking about, planning out content. I do this every month with our video. We have a video, Get Social Smart video show. It's on YouTube and Facebook for 2 years now. Thank you. And the reason why we've been able to do it for 2 years is because once a month I sit down, and I always feel like if I'm going to do my hair and makeup and do one video, I might as well sit down and record 4 or 5. And so I sit down, I batch create 4 or 5 videos. And we think about that with a lot of our content. If I'm going to go into Canva and create one little graphic, I might as well go into Canva and create like 5 or 6 or maybe even 10 graphics, right? So this idea of setting aside time, I think for a lot of people in real estate, time blocking is something that you hear taught a lot of when it comes to business development. And I think that's really important as well as social media and content creation. So I recommend setting aside, blocking off some time once a month to do a little bit of that batch creating. Maybe it's 2 to 4 hours once a month where you're sitting down, you're taking out that big calendar like you are, David, or you're sitting down and you're recording a bunch of videos or podcast content. And then also on a weekly basis, right, where you set aside maybe 30 minutes once a week to schedule out some of your content. I don't think scheduling some things is necessarily a bad thing. I think, again, it's getting into a consistency and a rhythm. That consistency really builds trust. That's where I think there's a lot of value in that. And so those are a few things that can make a big difference. I would also really encourage people that the more you can think ahead, the better. So if you can really sit down and start to brainstorm a list of topics, things that people ask you all the time, and then start to kind of plug that into what type of content you can create that supports that, there's a lot of value in that. And I actually also believe in starting with your pillar content. So pillar content is something that takes a little bit of time, money, and resources to create. Like this is pillar content. This takes time, money, and resources for you to create. But here's the beautiful thing. When you create pillar content, it's one piece of content that could get repurposed, a dozen different ways.
You mean with notes and stuff that you can turn into micro content?
Exactly, right? Even if it doesn't even get sliced and diced, if you put a piece of content up on Facebook today, I'm not going to remember it in 3 days. You could share it again next week and it's going to feel like a brand new piece of content. And guess what? You could share it again in 3 months and you could share it again in 3 months. So when you're putting out content that's relevant, not just today, but relevant in the future, thinking through that process, thinking of kind of your distribution strategy is really, really valuable. So there's a lot more we could talk about.
Oh my God, there's so much. And you know what? I mean, I can see the times taken there. And I again, for everybody, our audience and everybody else, and not to like information overload. But before we go, can you share just some favorite, like you just mentioned Canva. I use Canva as well. Can you mention maybe some of your favorite apps with people that they can use to just up their social game stuff they might, they should check out?
Yeah, Canva's great. I've been using Canva for a long time. One thing I'd recommend with Canva is set up templates, right? So as you're thinking about your content, if you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do a Monday market update, or I'm going to do a tip Tuesday, or, open house Sunday, set up a template. And then when you're going in to batch create your content, that's how you can create 20 pieces of content really easily, because you can create a simple template in Canva where you're rinsing and repeating, and you're consistent with how your content looks. So I love Canva for that. As far as apps on my phone, there's an app I've been using for years that I love called Word Swag.
Love it. I use it all the time. I think when you become part of the Word Swag culture, you can already tell. You can be like, they used Word Swag.
I know. I love it. I love inspirational quotes. I like to do a Monday motivation and a Wednesday wisdom. Those are two of my posts I usually do every week. So I create those.
Some theming.
Yeah, so some theming. The theming helps you stay consistent.
Yep.
I love using those. For Instagram stories, I'll give you one app that I've been really loving. It's an app called Unfold.
What is it called?
Unfold.
F-O-L-D? Unfold?
Yes.
Okay.
U-N and then fold, F-O-L-D.
What does that do?
So Unfold is great for stories. What I love about it is there's some really beautiful templates. So when you open up Unfold, you can pick different templates. You can do like different collages. So if you're maybe at an event and you've taken like 50 photos and you don't want to put them all on Instagram stories, you can open up a template and it has, you can put like 5 or 6 different photos.
And then post that.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
It just kind of adds a little, little extra something to your Instagram stories. It allows you to kind of put little white borders around your stories and add text and photos. So
I haven't heard of that one. I'm going to check that one out.
It's kind of fun. It's really fun for events. I find that I use that a lot for events. I did that after speaking at Inman, connected, did some fun kind of Instagram stories that just kind of stood out a little bit differently.
I think I might, you know what? I'm sure I was watching, so I must have seen it. And you know what? Now it comes back together and you go, okay, cool. It makes sense how that was done.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. And what about sort of scheduling? Is there anything there from a content calendar? Like I know in some of your past videos, you've mentioned some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something there that you might recommend in terms of if anybody wants to do it electronically?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different things. We use a project management tool called Asana. It's just Asana, Asana. A lot of people also use Trello as well.
Yes,
That's
I
a
use
really
Trello. Love
common.
Trello.
So both are really great. There's a free version. There's a paid version. We like Asana just personally kind of from a project management standpoint. And one of the ways we use it is we put our content, kind of our content calendar in there, and then we're able to really outline all the different distribution that happens so that, one video that comes out once a week, what are the 25 or 30 different things that happen with it. It's all like tasked out in Asana. So it's very systemized. If you're a systems person, you'll probably really like using either Asana or Trello. So we use that a lot. I also use just Google Documents. I think Google Documents are easy. Spreadsheets are simple.
Cool.
For Instagram specifically, I like to use Later.com.
Okay.
It's awesome. It's a free tool. So there's also a paid version, but
is that a scheduler? Is that what that is?
It's a scheduler for Instagram. You can schedule your stories or your posts. Again, I don't schedule everything, but I just like the layout of it. It's really easy to use. You can use it on your desktop. You can use it on your phone. You can save all your hashtags, which makes it really easy for Instagram.
Hashtags. You mentioned an app before for hashtags that people, if they wanted to, they could go and they could search a hashtag and go, how many people are following that? And I know you can do some of that stuff within Instagram, but you had some cool apps that you had mentioned once. Yeah,
there's a great free website. It's called hashtagify.me. Hashtagify.me. And it's, again, they have a free version, they have a paid version, but basically you go in there and you can type any hashtag or just any word and it'll show you what other trending hashtags have to do with that hashtag. And some of them may not be relevant, but some of them might be. And so it just kind of it's a great place to start if you're kind of like, I don't know what hashtags I should start using for Instagram.
But it's true, right? Because even when we start to think about the logic behind hashtags, and again, we could dig like way into that one, but it's something to check out.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Katie, this has been absolutely awesome. I thank you so much for this today.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
Best place for people to find me is my website, katielance.com. And I would invite people to check me out there. I'm also, of course, on social media, so you can find me just about anywhere with Katie Lance. But if people go to my website, they can sign up for my email newsletter if they'd like. We have a great free content grid as well. So if people are just kind of getting started with content strategy and they need a little bit of help, there's some great free resources on our site.
Do it, everybody. Do it. I highly suggest for those of you that don't yet, because I know most of you do, we all do, follow Katie. But make sure that you do follow Katie for literally some of the best in social media advice.
Thank you, David.
Okay. You're either watching us live, watching the recording, listening to this on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or even Spotify. Or maybe you went to industrysyndicate.com or even mindshare101.com. Wherever you like to consume your content, please rate, review, and subscribe. And if you haven't yet, connect with me on Facebook at Mindshare101 and on Instagram at DavidGreenspan101. This has been another episode of the Mindshare Podcast. Thanks everyone for watching and listening.